Welcome back to Breaking Through with me, Kristen Rao Finkfinder, powered by Moms Rising. We have a spectacular guest joining us today. We have Taylor Austin with Moms Rising. Welcome, Taylor.
Hi, Kristen. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad you're on. Recently, we marked the most horrifying day. Well, maybe not the most horrifying day, but it's certainly a depressing day, which was Moms Equal Pay Day. And that is the day in 2025 that moms have to work in order to earn what dads earned in 2024 alone. And yes, people who are looking at the calendar, it is May, the fifth month into 2025. Taylor, can you share a little bit about the wage gaps and what's happening and sort of what they are? Because there's a bunch of different wage gaps, not just one.
Sure. So since we're talking about mothers specifically, and Mom's Equal Pay Day falls in May, that number is 74 cents for every dollar paid to um, dads that are working. And that's our full-time year-round worker number. The number gets much worse when we start to include folks who are working part-time or people who work seasonally. And so that number drops to 62 cents on the dollar for all working moms. And that puts them somewhere in August if we're talking about the time frame that it takes them to make the same amount of money that dads made in 2024.
It's awful.
Uh, mhm. It is. It's horrendous. And not only that, but we're also, if we take a deeper dive into some racial and ethnic breakouts for that, Latina moms, Native American moms, and Black moms are all earning less than 50 cents on the dollar to white dads, with Latina moms earning just 43 cents, Native American moms making 48 cents, and Black moms making 49 cents. White mothers make what we are calling our average, which is 62% on the dollar. And Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander moms are making about 73 cents on the dollar. However, that number is even misleading because that group, Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander folks, there are so many different communities within there that make less than 50 cents on the dollar. So that's not even a full representation or accurate depiction of how steep the wage gap is for women of color.
This is a terrible, awful, very bad situation. It's not just a very bad situation for the 86% of women who do become moms by the time they're 44 years old, but also for America. So when we look at how our economy runs, what fuels our economy, right now, 72% of our GDP is actually consumer spending. And women and moms make over 80% of those consumer spending decisions. So we know that when we don't have money to spend, when we don't have fair pay, then we all lose out because we can't fuel the economy by buying those shoes when our kids' feet grow and need a new size shoe, or buying anything that we need in our homes, or putting food on the table. I mean, really, it's a big problem. And you can see the big problem in the inverse. And that is that places like the Institute for Women's Policy Research and more have found that if we did have pay parity, we would increase our nation's entire GDP by 3 to 5%. We would lift the whole economy. So when people talk about the mom wage gap, sometimes they're like, that's just a problem for moms. But no, it's a problem for everyone. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's absolutely spot on, Kristen. Moms are, especially moms of color, are 3 times more likely to be the breadwinners in their homes. And they're also the ones making decisions on consumerism in their home. And so if we don't have that money to spend, then we don't have that money to fuel the economy. We're also lacking money for retirement. And so this is a much larger issue than just a single paycheck, one family, one community. This is an economic issue that spans the country. And I think mothers deserve better. We deserve more.
We so deserve more. You mentioned retirement and the impact on retirement. Can you share some of those numbers? Because I think our listeners and our audience would be appalled at how these wage gaps add up over time.
Sure. So it's women who are 65 and older are usually losing about $5,000 a year in their retirement when the wage gap is considered. And so that's $5,000 that they don't have to put away in their retirement. Um, for their household bills, for any incidentals that come up when they are in retirement on a fixed income. And so that's truly detrimental to families. It's also detrimental to um, our economy.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things, I have so many things to talk about this because there's so many things. So I have two things that I want to talk about at the same time, but we'll take them one at a time. One of the things is sometimes I hear people say, "Ah, it's mom's fault that they're getting paid less for the same work." Well, we are here to tell you it is not. So that's the first thing we want to talk about. The second thing we want to talk about, listeners and audience, is there are solutions. So we'll get to that because this is not an unsolvable problem. So first, let's go back to the whose fault is it issue, because I tell you, every week somebody says, well, isn't it just your own fault? No, nope, nope, it is not. So we have rooms full of studies that show that this wage gap is based on actual discrimination. And here's one of them. Cornell University and Stanford University did a study of two pieces of paper. Note, there's not a person involved who could have been working harder. There's not a person involved who could have been, quote, leaning in or not leaning in. There's not a person involved who could have like done better, in some way, shape, or form. We're talking about paper. And that's why I love paper takes the personality out of the conversation. So there's two pieces of paper on they have equal resumes and equal job experiences on both pieces of paper with one difference. The one difference is on one resume, it says that they're a mom. On the other resume, it says nothing about motherhood. And guess what? Moms were hired 100% less of the time than non-moms, and were offered $11,000 lower starting salaries for highly paid jobs. So people are like, maybe that just happens to parents. Nope. Same study was done with dads and non-dads. Dads were offered $6,000 more. So what we see happening is moms getting a wage hit, dads getting a wage bump, and then with moms getting a wage hit, as you just mentioned, you pull into that also structural racism and discrimination. And we see this delineation where moms of color are experiencing compounded wage hits that are based on discrimination. So do you get that question often too about, is this really happening? Is this your fault? What's happening? What should we also share about why this is a real problem?
Kristen, you're absolutely right. Racism and sexism are two of our largest factors. The motherhood penalty is also a large factor, but we also should talk about disproportionate care responsibilities, right? So mothers spend considerably more time on caregiving activities than fathers, and that's unpaid work. And that unequal distribution of unpaid work limits the amount of hours and opportunities that they have in the traditional workforce. And so a lot of moms end up being pigeonholed into part-time work or no work at all because they have to take on these other caregiving responsibilities that are unpaid. And that's I would say, a large contributor also to the wage gap from others.
100%. And that also explains how we get to some of these solutions. It's like a good bridging conversation. And I like to say caregiving is work. Paid caregiving is work. Unpaid caregiving is work. And we have so devalued and made invisible the unpaid caregiving work that devaluation follows people who are caregivers all the way over into the paid labor force. So what are solutions? Well, study after study shows that when we build a care infrastructure, that we can close the wage gap. So what is this care infrastructure? Well, we can help close the wage gap. The number of different policies need to happen at the same time. And that includes access to paid family medical leave, like every country except 6 already have in place. And we are one of those countries in those 6 that doesn't have it. Access to affordable childcare, and childcare right now costs more than college in most states. And importantly, childcare workers, many of whom are moms, also are paid some of the lowest salaries in our country. Access to healthcare, and healthcare Republicans have put on the chopping block right now. It's ridiculous, but access to healthcare, access to earned sick days. Everybody gets sick. Everybody should have a chance to get better. And those policies, combined with policies like the Paycheck Fairness Act, are together how structures can be built to help lower that wage gap that study after study has shown is a way forward. Did I miss any policies that we need for solutions?
No, I think policy-wise, you're spot on. And just to reinforce the Paycheck Fairness Act, that was just reintroduced at the end of March into both the House and the Senate by Senator Patty Murray and also Representative Rosa DeLauro, who have worked on this for many, many years. We are grateful for their championship of the Paycheck Fairness Act. And we really do need these policies, like you said, to happen all at the same time, right? To help us close the wage gap for moms.
Yeah, and some people say, "Okay, you have too many issues. You have too many bills that need to happen at the same time." To that, I say, Congress covers thousands of bills every session. They can do R4 at the same time. This is possible, and it's not rocket science. Studies show that these policies boost our economy, our businesses, and our families, and our health. So this is, I think really important. What should people do right now? Do you have advice on activism?
Sure. I think number one, if you have been a victim of pay discrimination, of wage discrimination, if you have experienced the motherhood penalty, I think talking about it, sharing your story, helping other moms, other parents, and other caregivers know that they're not alone in their experiences, I think that is very important. And Moms Rising is always here to hear your story, to help you share your story with those who need to hear it most, which are legislators. They are much more moved by the personal stories of their constituents than they are by the numbers, the data. They want to hear about what is happening to their constituents. And so I think sharing your story is extremely vital. And then I think uh, other ways to get involved, other ways to help push this work forward is to sign on to petitions, sign on letters with your local and federal advocacy organizations that are doing this work, like Moms Rising. And we will link to a petition that you can sign to help moms achieve equal pay by calling on Congress to do just what we said, which is support and sponsor and push through some of these bills.
Yeah, absolutely. And they need to do it yesterday. And I'm mad. I have to share my madness right now. I'm mad because those policies that we just named to help close the wage gap are the very same policies that Republican leadership and Donald Trump are suggesting get massive cuts right now in our nation's capital just to give billionaires more tax breaks. I'm so mad. And some people say, well, does it cost too much money to do? No, it costs too much money not to do. And in fact, it would easily be paid for, all of these programs, by a fair tax system where bazillionaires and corporations pay the fair amount of their taxes, similar to what the rest of us are already paying. That would actually cover these programs entirely. So, hello, I want to add in, when you call into your member of Congress and say, push forward the Paycheck Fairness Act, also say, push back the Republican budget that undermines families and our economy. I mean, I'm so mad. Are you mad about that?
Absolutely. And we really do need Congress and um, this administration to prioritize families over billionaires, over the wealthy, because the families of this country are the bread and butter of this country.
And the heart and the soul and the thank you for being on so much. Thank you, Taylor, for all you do. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, of course. No problem. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.